When a 93-year-old man began his job at a local supermarket, he sparked widespread bewilderment. The most perplexed of all was the supermarket's manager. Initially skeptical, the manager's doubts only grew until he finally dismissed the elderly employee. However, upon discovering the true identity of the old man, the manager's face drained of color immediately. The supermarket manager was a tough man with high standards. Every facet of his store had to run smoothly because your business is only as good as your weakest link. So when he heard that corporate was sending over a 93-year-old employee to strengthen his ranks, he was understandably frustrated. When the old man stepped into the store for the first time, manager Dylan already had significant concerns. The man looked frail and moved around the store at a slow pace. How is this man ever going to keep up with the demanding tempo of a day-to-day shift? Dylan said as he eyeballed the man, and pretty soon the manager's words were confirmed. The old man, named Aiden, was beyond slow. He worked at his own pace, restocking items almost 4 times as slowly as the other employees, not to mention the minor mistakes that kept happening. That's why it wasn't long before Aiden was on the manager's radar. Dylan watched the old-timer like a hawk, and the desire to fire him grew with every small mistake Aiden made. This just didn't work in his system. The final straw was reached when Aiden tipped over a wine rack filled with the store's most expensive bottles. That man has to go. Dylan quickly approached Aiden while the old man was still shaking from the wine rack incident, and in the presence of many paying customers and his fellow staff members, Dylan fired the old man on the spot. He had to hand over his apron and keys and leave the store immediately. After the firing process was concluded, Dylan placed his hand on the old man's shoulder and escorted him out of the store. It was sad to see, and the people present didn't like the call, but Dylan was glad it was done. After that, he expected never to see Aiden again, but he was mistaken. Because the very next day, Aiden appeared in the store again. This time, he stepped in as a customer, and Dylan couldn't fault him for that. People needed to buy groceries after all, but Aiden didn't buy a single thing. He just lingered around for a long time, confusing the young manager. And Aiden's disruption didn't stop there, because he walked into the store daily after that first initial visit. The visits were confusing to Dylan, but they remained innocent. But that changed when something very weird happened about a week later. Dylan checked the store's camera footage when he got home and was in complete shock. He always checked the store's cameras at home just as a final check before concluding his workday, but this time he saw movement. He looked closely and saw Aiden wandering around the store after closing time. The old man appeared to be working, holding a clipper and pen as he navigated the aisles. Dylan was perplexed as he watched the old man stroll around his supermarket. How did this guy get in? Does he still have a spare set of keys? The sight of Aiden started to anger Dylan severely, and he felt his face twitch because of it. What the hell is he doing? Angrily, the manager turned off his computer and rushed toward his car. He had to get to the store quickly and confront this old fool before he could get away. On the car ride, he wondered if Aiden wasn't just a confused old man. Maybe he had dementia. He had to handle this delicately. When Dylan found his way to the store, he saw that Aiden was still there. The old fool was just browsing around like he did on the camera footage. Normally, Dylan would have gotten angry, but this time, he just confiscated the keys and let Aiden return home after a strict warning. But Aiden was far from done, because the next day the exact same thing happened. Dylan turned on his computer back home after work, and lo and behold, the old man had found his way back into the store again. What's up with this guy? Does he have multiple keys? Dylan shouted at the screen. Dylan let out a frustrated sigh and headed over to the store again, but this time he came prepared. Dylan grabbed his phone and called the police. He explained about Aiden and all the weird stuff that had been happening. The police understood and promised to come by as quickly as possible. Both Dylan and the police arrived at the supermarket at the same time. It was time this all stopped, Dylan thought. Together, they stepped in and confronted Aiden about his inappropriate behavior. The old man had to hand over his keys again, but this time the police decided to take him back to the bureau. Dylan was happy that Aiden was in the hands of the authorities now. Hopefully, this scares him enough to leave me in my store alone. But right before the old man stepped into the police car, he had a few final words for Dylan. "Wait until you find out who I am," Aiden said, smiling. That remark caused even more confusion in the manager's mind. Find out who I am. Dylan had no idea what Aiden was talking about, but he knew he wanted to find out more. So when the police successfully placed the old man in their car, Dylan asked if he could also come to the station. The police agreed, and Dylan followed along in his car. Dylan entered the bureau where he saw Aiden sitting in an interrogation room. It was a place where people would generally feel quite nervous, but Aiden seemed utterly relaxed. He just sat there and smiled as his eyes crossed Dylan's. Dylan expected the police to give the man a strict warning or a fine to keep him from entering the store again, but quite the opposite happened. He saw Aiden shake the hand of the officer and smile before getting up and walking out of the room. The sight frustrated Dylan again. After that confusing scene, the police officer stepped out to address Dylan. The man in uniform told Dylan that everything had checked out and that they would not press charges against the old man. Dylan did not understand why they weren't taking this seriously, but that's when Aiden himself stepped in. The old man stood on the other side of the room as he called Dylan over. "Come here, young man, we have to talk," he spoke. Dylan, already confused about the situation, obliged because he wanted answers. He was guided towards an empty table with 2 chairs on either side. As he sat down, Aiden said. Once Dylan sat down, Aiden decided to do the same. There was a brief moment of silence, but then the old man started talking. He understood the manager's confusion, but assured Dylan that he himself did not do anything wrong. He was in his full right to be at the store after closing. Dylan frowned his eyebrows, and he fiercely disagreed with that statement. There was nothing right about an ex-employee wandering around the store after closing. You should not have extra keys, and you are not allowed on company property after hours. I demand an explanation, and I demand it now, Dylan said strictly. For a brief moment, Dylan took over the conversation, a choice that he would later come to regret. He stated that he made the right choice in firing Aiden. He was too old for the job and unqualified to work in his store. I don't know why corporate sent you over in the first place. Dylan's speech was cut short by Aiden. Young man, it was not the board of corporate that sent me to your store. I sent myself because I am corporate. Dylan didn't follow and was utterly confused. The old man ended by saying that he knew Dylan very well before joining his team. The old man then let the cat out of the bag by revealing that he was not just any old man. He was the original owner and founder of the supermarket chain Dylan worked for. And as CEO, he was still very much involved in the business he started all those years ago. But what did you mean when you said you knew me well? Dylan asked the owner carefully. The owner's face didn't move a muscle. He said that during Dylan's reign as manager, he received an alarming number of complaints about his style of management, but before passing judgment, he wanted to witness it for himself. So as a result of these complaints, I enrolled myself as an employee at your supermarket, and I must say that I can't argue with the complaints I received about you witnessing your behavior firsthand. I can only say that I'm very disappointed. The owner's remarks scared Dylan to his core. Dylan was in shock after hearing about the old man's big reveal. And even more so when he heard why he transferred himself. Dylan realized he was in big trouble and felt his body shiver accordingly with trembling hands and a shaky voice. He asked what were to complain, sir. The owner scraped his throat and said that the list seemed never-ending. Almost every employee who worked for Dylan over the last year said they hated working for him. The managerial style was inhumanely strict and uncompromising, and we have the yearly company survey to prove that fact, Aiden said, but those were just the numbers from a company-broad survey. What really struck Aiden hard were the complaints employees sent him personally, and the first one came almost immediately after Dylan became manager. Aiden stated that the first woman to complain was Violet from the bakery. Violet mailed the owner a little over a year ago. She complained about the fact that Dylan made her work long hours. I was working well over 2 hours extra every day. He was demanding and didn't even let me have a break after working 6 hours straight. But the worst part was yet to come because even though she complained about the extra hours, she mostly stayed quiet. but when he refused to let her go home at a normal hour so she could see her daughter's dance recital, Violet had enough. She stood up and got out. As a result, Dylan threatened to fire her and eventually downgrade her paycheck. And that was just the first of your many transgressions, young man, Aiden said with a frown on his face. Thai reports show that you repeatedly yell at staff members in front of customers for making minor mistakes. And to prove that point, we even received a phone call from one member about that exact problem. A young boy named Caleb Rivera called into the office just over a month ago. The boy was just 15 years old, and you belittled him for dropping a carton of milk, not just in person, but in front of a fully packed store. The boy called corporate crying, saying you humiliated and demoralized him, and then the final straw came in just over a week ago. This time it wasn't even a staff member, but a customer of the store itself, who filed a complaint about you, an old man in a mobile scooter. Do you remember him? Aiden asked the shivering supermarket manager. Aiden continued by saying that the senior customer filed a complaint after the floor manager rudely escorted him out of the store. The reason was holding up the cash register line when his mobile scooter got stuck between the poles, something he could not do anything about, but still, you had to shout at him. Aiden ended the conversation by saying that a positive working environment was the most crucial thing in any business, big or small. He started with that philosophy over 60 years ago when he opened his first local supermarket, and it is just as true today, the old man said proudly. Until now, Dylan had made it through this conversation by simply listening. They were tough words to swallow, but they had no big consequences for him. But that was about to change because Aiden turned the tables on Dylan and started firing him this time, thereby ending his dominant reign. When Dylan heard those words, he couldn't help but burst into tears. The impactful examples of his bad behavior and the job-ending conclusion brought the supermarket manager down a couple of pegs. He realized what his actions had caused other people and felt only sadness and remorse at that point. The once tough manager fell to his knees and begged the proud owner to reconsider his punishment. He admitted to all his wrongdoings and promised to change for the better. "I'm so sorry. I will never do those things again and make amends for all of it," Dylan said. The tear-filled eyes of the grounded Dylan seemed to work a little because the old man stopped his firing speech and looked the supermarket manager straight in the eyes. "You say that you're sorry. You said that you can learn and change. All right. Might have an idea," Aiden said, smiling. Aiden invited Dylan to stand up again. He then made a promise that he could remain an employee of his supermarket chain, but there was one condition. He had to prove himself. Prove that he could work hard, work with others, and be a team player. And it would not be as a manager. Aiden offered him a new job on the spot. It was not the manager position. Dylan got demoted as a simple floor employee. It was the lowest job in the company's system. But Aiden felt it suited this situation perfectly. "You need to learn how to be humble again," the old man said. Dylan looked into Aiden's eyes and knew he was right. He had to prove himself, and that was what he would do. Dylan took the job and would show everyone that he could do better. Aiden was happy to hear this and said he would come by later to see if he kept his word. After about a month, the owner revisited the store for the first time. He had 0 complaints at corporate, but that didn't mean everything was fine. He wanted to see for himself. Coming in, he was greeted friendly by Violet, the new manager. Yeah, she got bumped up from baker to manager after Dylan's demotion. Yeah, Aiden shook her hand and asked how things were, but mostly he was interested in Dylan's role in the store. Is he adjusting well? Is he causing any trouble? Aiden asked, but to his surprise, he got a positive response. Violet told Aiden that Dylan's attitude made a complete 180. Violet continued by saying that Dylan was a bit reluctant at first. He complained and was having a hard time adjusting to his new role, but at one point it just clicked, and he has not looked back since. Dylan worked hard, and in the effort, he even became friends with some coworkers, and after about a year of hard work, dedication, and a positive attitude, things were looking up for Dylan. He even got his old job back and now ran the store together with Violet as co-managers, but this time he did it with a smile, promoting teamwork and good company values. I'm really keen to know your thoughts on this story, so please don't hesitate to share your insights in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video and found it engaging, I invite you to subscribe to our channel for more similar content. Feel free to share this video with your friends and family to spread the enjoyment. Take good care of yourselves, and I'm excited to connect with you in our future videos.